My name is Lauren, and this is part one in my series called Simple SolidWorks, which is just going to be a nice introduction for anyone who doesn't really have a lot of experience designing parts or CADing things using SolidWorks. So as you can see, I'm going to be using SolidWorks 2017, and the pieces that we're going to be creating are based off of files released by GrabCAD on their website. So for this part, we're going to be creating a CS bracket. You can see it right here. This is the part drawing for it, and you can see it's not terribly complicated. Start with a cut base, and then you've got an extrusion up here with a ramp almost cut in the middle. So what we're going to do first is have your SolidWorks open, and to create a new part file, you're going to come up here to this top bar, locate the icon that looks like a little sheet of paper up here. When you click on it, it's going to bring up this window. You're going to make sure that part is selected, hit OK, and then SolidWorks is going to generate a new part file for you. Go back to this blueprint. The first thing we need to do is make this base here at the bottom, and you can see most of the dimensions for this base are laid out right here. This is our top view, and so we're going to start by creating this general rectangle with our rounded corners. It's not too bad. So the first thing we need to do is, because we know we need to extrude something, we're going to go to our Features tab up here and hit Extruded Boss Base. And so what it's going to ask is, what plane or surface are we going to extrude from? And for this part, I would suggest using the top plane. So you click on it, and now we are looking down onto the top plane. So anything we draw is going to be on this plane, and then when we turn it into a 3D shape, it's going to come from this plane. So before we start actually drawing, I do want to have a little reminder. One of the most important things you need to keep in mind when you're CADing is what units your part is in. I've made this mistake so many times. I'll get all the way through CADing a part and then realize that I'm using metric units when it really should be in imperial units, or vice versa. So for this part, it doesn't specifically say what unit system we're going to use, but I'm going to show you how to change the units anyways. So you come down here to this bottom right corner, and you can click Custom. So right now we aren't really using a specific system. It's automatically putting us on the millimeter, but I'm going to put us on MMGS, millimeter gram second. It really doesn't change much, but it's important to know how to change your units, and it's good to keep that in mind before you start CADing. And I actually think that closed us out of our sketch, so let's go back to Extruded Boss Base, click on our top plane. Okay, and we're back. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't terribly a complex shape. It's a rectangle with two rounded caps, as you could call them. The other word for this shape is a slot, and SolidWorks actually has a tool for that. So if we go back, up here are all our drawing tools. You can notice we're on the Sketch tab now. So all of these things up here are specifically for drawing shapes that we're later going to extrude or manipulate. And if you look down here, you've got line, rectangle, and then slot. And there's 4 different options, but for what we're going to do, I would suggest using the center point straight slot. The way you use this is you click it, you'll notice it opens it up, and you'll notice my cursor has changed too. I've got a pencil now. And because this is a center point slot, we're going to click where we want our center. So I'm going to click on the origin. You'll notice there's a little orange dot there. Click once, pull out, can change the angle. I'm going to do horizontal. Then you click again and pull out and click again. There you go. That's a slot. So when SolidWorks has blue lines, you can notice this entire border is blue. It means that this shape can be manipulated. It is not set in stone or anything. It's not defined. And the other thing is, you'll notice that this is a shaded color instead of just being a blank outline. That means that SolidWorks recognizes this as a shape that it could extrude, which is good. So now that we have our shape, it's time to add some dimensions. Look back on our blueprint and it says 144 units, millimeters, between the two ends of our slot, and then these arcs on either end, these semicircles, have radii of 32 millimeters. So when we go back, we're going to use our Smart Dimension tool right up here in the corner. Click on it, and just going to click on this line, pull up, and say 114. You hit enter, and so that part is now defined. And the last thing we need to do is go here and define our caps. All you have to do is click on the line, and it said that our radius is 32. And there you go. So you'll notice now the lines are all black. Black lines are good. They mean that your part is defined. And so you'll notice now when I try to drag it, I'm not changing the shape of that part, which is good. You want parts to be completely defined if at all possible so that they can't be manipulated or warped or changed or anything unless you go in and change the dimensions. It ensures that if you try to take these parts and put them in an assembly, they won't get all messed up and changed without you needing them to. Everything will fit right. So if we go back to our drawing, we notice there's these two holes that are kind of cut out, and you can see them right here. They're centered on the ends of that slot line, the one that cuts through the middle of it, and it says that their diameter is 22. So if you'll notice over here it says R32. The R stands for radius, so that's going to be half of your diameter. This circle with a line through it, that is diameter. So, and you'll notice actually the dimension too has a line going all the way through it. For full circles, you're more likely to see dimensions and diameter. When it's an arc, you're almost always going to see it with radius. So we need two circles with diameters of 22. So, oops. We go back to our part, and there's a circle tool up here right next to our line tool, and circles are really cool. There's only two ways you can really draw them in SolidWorks, but we're going to go with this center point circle. It's the easiest one. You're probably going to use it the most, and I'm going to pick my center right here on this end, click once, drag, click again. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here, click once, drag, click again. I hit escape and I'm out of that tool. And now I can go back to my Smart Dimension, click on the border, and say that I want my diameter to be 22 millimeters. You'll notice it doesn't specify units, but like I said, we changed our units in the beginning, and so everything in here is in millimeters. Now, I could add another dimension over onto the circle here on the right, but it's good to get yourself into the habit of minimizing how many dimensions you need in your parts. The more complex your parts get, the more dimensions you're going to need to fully define everything. But the more dimensions you add, the more cluttered it gets. And after a certain point, it becomes really difficult to weed out what the actual part looks like behind all of the dimensions. And so it's a good thing to keep in your mind about trying to add relations between different parts of your sketches. And so I'll demonstrate that. So in order to add a relation between two things, you first need to have them selected so that SolidWorks can recognize what it's going to happen, or what two parts of your sketch the relation is going to be between. So the way you do that is you come up and you click on the first part. So I'm going to click on this one circle. You'll notice it's highlighted. Then you're going to hold your Shift key and click on the next part. So now you'll notice we have two highlighted circles, and over here on the left, we've opened up a Properties tab. I want these two to have equal diameters, so I'm going to go down and hit equal. Hit check, and now you'll notice this is a black line. This part is 100% defined. So before we extrude it, we need to know how far we're going to extrude it. So in this one, we're going to look at the front plane of the drawing, which is this part right here in the bottom left. And this base has a height of 19 units. So we're going to go back to our part, exit from the sketch here in the very top left, and now it's going to let us extrude. And so this yellow highlighted part is kind of SolidWorks' way of letting you visualize what's going to happen, and it'll change as you mess with the settings. So for direction, we want to keep it. We're just going to say it's going to blindly go up. We don't really need to change anything about that. This DI is your depth, and so we're going to change that to 19 millimeters. You'll notice the highlight changes with it, and that's really all we need to do. So we're going to come back and hit this little green check, and boom, there you go. So if you want to look around and change your viewpoint, you can hold down your mouse wheel and drag, kind of get a better view at this. So this is our top plane again. I can show you that. So yeah, this part is sitting on the top plane. But we still have more to add. So let's go back to our blueprint, our drawing. I keep calling it a blueprint. So now we have this big extrusion on top of our base. I'm going to go back to our drawing. We're going to extrude something from this. So we're going to go back to extruded boss base, click it again. This time we have a part, so it's going to ask us to select either a plane or a planar face. So we're going to come up and we're going to click the very top of this part. And the cool thing is, up here you can see a cube with arrows in it. This is going to let you change the way that you look at the part, and I want to look at this part from the top. So you click it and you locate this one up here, top, and boom, it'll automatically have you perfectly aligned. This comes really in handy if you're working with very geometric parts. So what I'm seeing here is that we can basically make a rectangle and extrude it upwards, kind of like we did the base, on top of what we already have. I'm going to go back, and I know that it hits both of these edges. It's going to be flush on both edges. So what I can do is make a simple rectangle. And because it's centered on this origin right here, you can actually use the center rectangle tool. So you have line, then you have all your rectangles. You click on center rectangle. It's really similar to circles and slots. You're going to click where you want the center, and then you drag out and have all of your sides come with it. This is going to be another test in relations because I know that these lines, these top and bottom lines, need to be flush with these lines, these top and bottom lines on our base. And so there's actually a really nice way we can do this without having to add an extra dimension, because like I said, you don't want to clutter up your parts. So what you can do is click on this line, hold shift, and then click on this line, this top line. And now you can come over to your properties, add a relation, and say that they are collinear. So if you remember from geometry, collinear is when two lines occupy the same space in whatever planes that they can. Oops, I'm not done yet. Okay. So you'll notice that these lines up on top and bottom are black. That's what we want, but these lines still move. These lines still move, and that's a problem. You don't want that. So if we go to our drawing, it says that the height, or sorry, the width of this block that we're going to extrude is 13 plus 38 plus 13. So if you'll notice, it means that each of these little sides up here are 13 units, and then this big gap is 38 units across. So go back to our smart dimension, and if you're a math whiz and you automatically know what 13 plus 13 plus 38 is, good for you. If you want to take a shortcut, good news, SolidWorks is actually set up for that. And so what you can do is you can do 13 plus 38 plus 13. And SolidWorks will automatically give you the dimension that you're looking for. So that comes in really handy. And now we're going to extrude this just like we did our other part. So the height of this is actually going to be 64 minus 19, because you'll notice this is the height we want. So we go back, we exit our sketch. I accidentally told it not to extrude, so I'm going to click it again. Come over here to my parts tree, select my sketch. There we go. That's what I want. So what did I say, 64 minus 19? Yeah, okay. So you come over here, you change your dimension, 64 minus 19, 45. There you go. Once you got that, you hit OK, and boom, you'll notice it's looking even more like the part. So the last thing we need to do is cut this little ramp triangle thing out of the very center of this part. There's actually a really neat way you can do this that comes in handy quite a lot. Now, the drawing for this part actually gives you a hint as to what we're going to do. You'll notice that there's this line AA that cuts this part in half evenly when you're looking at it from the front. And then you'll notice over here it says section AA. So what this is saying is that you've got the front plane that cuts this part in half, the right plane that cuts this part in front, and then on that plane, this is what your part looks like. So the shaded part is solid. This will be the back of this part, and then you've got the base, and then up here is that cut, that triangle cut. And so that's actually really helpful for us because it lets us know what type of cut we need. So if you go back to our part, up here on your Features tab, you've got all of your extrusions and sweeps and bases. All of these things are when you're going to, let's say, create matter. So when we extruded this base and we extruded this top part, we created something in SolidWorks. Divided by this line, however, are all of your extruded cuts and swept cuts and lofted cuts and boundary, all those. Whenever you have these, you're taking away matter. You're decreasing mass or volume. So we're going to choose extruded cut. And for this, instead of picking a top plane or one of these planes, we're actually going to pick our right plane. And I'll let you see why. So you'll notice the right plane cuts this part in half, just like that section AA did in the drawing. And so this is going to be really handy for us. Actually, I'll keep that up. Okay. Change the view again. We're going to look at it from the side. And now we just need to draw that triangle. So we know it goes from here, kind of goes to here. It doesn't have to be exact. We're going to dimension it later. So there you go. That's our triangle. And up here it says that the tip of the triangle in the top right is 13 millimeters away from the vertical plane of that extrusion. So come up to our smart dimension, click this tip of the triangle, click this line. I missed it. Click this line. And wow, I was close. Okay. Change that dimension to 13. There you go. So you'll notice we already have a line that is already set. So now our last dimension is that the angle between the top of the part and this hypotenuse line is 45 degrees. So we're going to come up to Smart Dimension and click on this top line, click on this hypotenuse, and there you go. You'll notice now we can add an angular dimension. Just close again, 45 units, hit enter, and boom. Black lines is good. That means that everything's defined. I can't drag it or mess with it or do anything, and that's awesome. So now we're going to exit, and this is our extrusion. So our last two extrusions had us just going in a blind direction. We didn't really care about anything around us because we didn't need to. The part wasn't that complex. However, now we need to change the direction that this cut is going because we want some of the cut on the left of this plane and some of the cut on the right. And so what you do is over here on this cut extrude panel, you'll notice it has direction 1. So we're going to change it from blind, which is what we've had it at, to mid-plane. So now you'll notice we've got equal distance on both of these sides, and the center part is cutting equally on either side of the right plane. So if we go back to our drawing, from this top view, you can tell that that center part is 38 millimeters across. I'm going to come back to our part. I'm going to change that dimension to 38. You'll notice it changed up here. Hit check. And there you go. That's how you make a CS bracket in SolidWorks. If you want to save your part, you can come up here, hit this save button, and bada bing, bada boom. There you go. You have created a new part in SolidWorks. So I really hope this tutorial helped, and I will be uploading a few more in my Simple SolidWorks series. I hope you check them out. As the series goes on, the parts are going to get a little bit more complex, but the goal of it is to teach you how to use most of the basic functions of SolidWorks so that you can be a more capable CADer. So thank you for watching.